So, how was the USSR created? The government of the Soviet Union formed in 1922 with the unification of the Russian, Transcaucasian, Ukrainian, and Belarusian republics. It was based on the one-party rule of the Communist Party, or Bolsheviks, who increasingly developed a totalitarian regime, especially during the reign of Joseph Stalin. One must understand that the Soviet Union had its roots in the October Revolution of 1917, when the Bolsheviks overthrew the Russian provisional government that had replaced Tsar Nicholas II. However, it only officially consolidated as the new government of Russia after the defeat of the White Army during the Russian Civil War in 1922. The period from the consolidation of the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917 until 1921 is known as the period of war communism. During this period, land, industry, and small business were nationalized and the economy was restricted. In 1922, Russia proper joined its far-flung republics to form the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. The first leader of this Soviet state was the Marxist revolutionary Vladimir Lenin. The USSR was ruled by a single party, the Communist Party, which demanded the allegiance of every Russian citizen. After 1924, when the dictator Joseph Stalin came to power, the state exercised totalitarian control over the economy, administering all industrial activity and establishing collective farms. It also controlled every aspect of political and social life. People who argued against Stalin's policies were arrested and sent to labor camps known as gulags or executed. After Stalin's death in 1953, Soviet leaders denounced his brutal policies but maintained the Communist Party's power. They focused in particular on the Cold War with Western powers, engaging in a costly and destructive arms race with the United States while exercising military force to suppress anti-communism and extend its hegemony in Eastern Europe. In March 1985, a longtime Communist Party politician named Mikhail Gorbachev assumed the leadership of the USSR. He inherited a stagnant economy. Gorbachev introduced two sets of policies that he hoped would help the USSR become a more prosperous, productive nation. The first of these was known as glasnost, or political openness. Glasnost eliminated traces of Stalinist repression, like the banning of books and the omnipresent secret police, and gave new freedoms to Soviet citizens. Political prisoners were released. Newspapers could print criticisms of the government. For the first time, parties other than the Communist Party could participate in elections. The second set of reforms was known as perestroika, or economic restructuring. The best way to revive the Soviet economy, Gorbachev thought, was to loosen the government's grip on it. He believed that private initiative would lead to innovation, so individuals and cooperatives were allowed to own businesses for the first time since the 1920s. Workers were given the right to strike for better wages and conditions. Gorbachev also encouraged foreign investment in Soviet enterprises. Frustration with the bad economy combined with Gorbachev's hands-off approach inspired independence movements in the republics on the USSR's fringes. One by one, the Baltic states, Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia declared their independence from Moscow. On December 8, Boris Yeltsin traveled to Minsk, where he met with leaders of the Republic of Belarus and Ukraine, signing an agreement that broke the two countries away from the USSR to create the Commonwealth of Independent States. Just weeks later, Belarus and Ukraine were followed by 8 of the 9 remaining republics, who declared their independence from the USSR after a meeting in Alma-Ata, in today's Kazakhstan. Georgia joined 2 years later. So, why is NATO still at the center stage of the global politics? NATO's original aim was to counter Russian expansion in Europe after World War II. Following the Soviet Union's collapse in 1991, many of its former Eastern European allies joined NATO. NATO has announced plans to massively increase the number of its forces at high readiness from 40,000 to over 300,000 troops. The Rapid Reaction Force is a combination of land, sea, and air assets designed to be deployed quickly in the event of attack. Some of these have already been sent to countries bordering Russia and Ukraine. Since Russia's invasion, NATO has also increased the number and size of its multinational battle groups stationed in Eastern Europe. So, let's talk about the history of NATO to understand its present context. There were only 12 members when NATO was set up in 1949 with the explicit purpose of militarily defending the US-led Western alliance against the threat from communism and the Soviet Union. In response, the Warsaw Treaty Organization, led by Moscow, came up on the other side of the Iron Curtain in 1955. Within a few years of the Soviet defeat, the United States embarked on its Partnership for Peace proposal, essentially a framework for NATO's eastward expansion towards Russia. The proposal attracted many of the erstwhile Eastern Bloc countries who were happy with the breakup of the Warsaw Pact. NATO offered Ukraine a path towards membership in 2008. After Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, Ukraine made joining a priority. But this has not happened, mainly because of Russia's long-standing opposition. Russia believes NATO has been encroaching on its area of political influence by accepting new members from Eastern Europe, and thinks that admitting Ukraine would bring NATO into its backyard. Russian leaders have long been wary of the eastward expansion of NATO, particularly as the alliance opened its doors to former Warsaw Pact states and ex-Soviet republics, including the Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland, and the early 2000s Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, Slovakia, and Slovenia. Their fears grew in the late 2000s as the alliance stated its intent to admit Georgia and Ukraine at an unspecified point in the future. Following the dissolution of the Soviet Union, NATO moved eastward to include Baltic republics such as Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, which were originally part of the Soviet Union. One of Russia's consistent demands has been for the North Atlantic Treaty Organization to stop expanding to the east and pledge never to include Kyiv in the security alliance. But NATO has long insisted it has an open-door policy to any nation that meets its criteria for membership. As a result, NATO, which was formed to fight the Soviet Union, drew closer to Moscow, bordering it directly. Russia has become increasingly isolated from the rest of Europe over the last 30 years. Finland and Sweden this week announced their intention to join the NATO military alliance. The two countries' plans came about after Russia invaded Ukraine in late February. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Leave a like if you want to see more of these videos. It really helps the channel. But for now, I hope to see you again soon.